deceptively delicate portraits of oppression, trauma and resistance, Kathia St Hilaire uses metal, rubber, canvas and printmaking to create multi-layered artwork, exploring the history of Haiti and examining her own place in that story. As the artist presents new work here in Paris, she's with us in the studio to tell us more. Kathia, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, this latest exhibition has a fascinating title. It's called The Vocals of the Chaotic Burst. And I know that the spiral form, the idea of spirals, is very important in these pieces. Can you tell us why?
Well, I wanted to see if I could, of course, when I found Frankétienne's work, I felt like it had like a universal message, or at least like a universal connection to how we see the world. So spiralism is basically a movement created during the Papa Doc regime to talk about at least like, chaotic, unstable, uncertain times. And that's what Frankétienne does in his book, Ready to Burst. So essentially it's the title of the show came from a collage, a collage of text from, his text to add to the work. So I was very obsessed with his book and also his paintings, Ready to Burst. And I really wanted to see how can I include him in this very, it's not really well known and it hasn't been explored, like what's the example of negritude. So I wanted to see how can I incorporate this in my new show.
And it seems like the poet Frankétienne has many echoes with the approach that you have in art, and he of course passed away just last year. Now, one piece in this show caught my eye. It actually features barbed wire woven into the canvas. It's called Guantanamo Bay 1 and 2, I think.
Yes.
Tell us about the choice of this very symbolic material in this piece.
Well, the area I'm in Bushwick, it's so much barbed wire, so much
in New York.
Yeah, in New York,
Wow.
And then also I was driving by just a lot of prisons, and I was really obsessed with just like the barbed wire of how like it has like this Celtic pattern to it when I like essentially flatten it and put a whole bunch together. But then it's like, how can I like create like a painting language and take away the sterileness to it? So being influenced by French Impressionism and also Vodun flags, I wanted to have this like just like as this, and also barbed wire is in a sense of like a spiral. So the goal was to have anything in a sense of circle repetition. So having that barbed wire in as like a metaphor of like just like we could talk about self-containment. We can talk about like just like actual containment, immigration, just like the containment of space and property. I just had like I was super enamored with this material and wanted to like create a painting language around that. So it's essentially painted and then sanded and then recollaged and carved in back on top to the paint, like within the paintings.
And it creates a really unique texture. And that layered approach is really distinctive in your work. We actually spoke to the curator of the latest exhibition at Perrotin Galerie here in Paris about Kathia's use of different media and some of the themes in the work.
Kathia St Hilaire initially trained in engraving, but she has completely reinterpreted this technique using unconventional materials. These can include banana leaves, packaging, and industrial materials. Ultimately, she reuses all these materials to create her own architectural works through a very long process involving different layers and sedimentation, so to speak. Her work seeks to highlight the history of Haitian culture and Haiti itself. It is not documentary in nature, but rather a sensitive representation of the realities of a country's history.
And indeed, Vanessa flags up there that Haitian history and politics have a really central role in your work, whether it's the nation's revolutionary past or the modern societal upheavals. I know your family's from Haiti and you grew up in the diaspora in Florida. How do you think that having that ancestral culture on one hand, but also growing up at a sort of geographical remove from it, has informed the way that you approach Haiti and Haitians in your work?
It informs the way because, I grew up with so much, of the culture. So whether if it's like, the food or even like some of the beauty products I choose to use or just like mannerisms and cultures. So I really... one thing I wasn't quite sure how to engage with it. What I mean by engage is like, how do I incorporate actual contemporary, like, past, like, Haitian artists. I often collect a lot of materials, so I collect a lot of like just like beauty packaging. I have like byproduct of like past like of old works that I use, different food packaging just to save and recollage into the work, different metals. Yes.
Yeah. So there's that artistic legacy, but then there's also these strong themes, I guess, of history, society, politics, and talking of contemporary Haiti, the country has experienced extreme political and social upheaval in recent years. It's currently being administered by a temporary transitional government. How do you see the situation there now and in the near future?
I see it's always very hard to no one doesn't know necessarily like the direction of where the country is going, but I feel like what the Frankétienne does, especially into Ready to Burst, I feel like it's a narrative. His book is so contemporary at least for our time, regardless of what country that you are, which is the idea of uncertainty. His answer is essentially you just really don't know what's going to happen next. It's not necessarily looking for answers, but like being in the moment and trying to live the life that you're living right now and seeing what unfolds. Because essentially when you do read the beginning of the passage of the book, he talks about a water drop, and water, when multiple water drops falls, essentially they all knock together with one another. So it's essentially you're living in different spirals. Everyone's experiencing different things at different times. So it's the idea of uncertainty, but also knowing that you're living within multiple different spirals. So there's no answer to your question.
Yeah, and that chaotic cycle that you reference, of course, in your exhibition. And you've mentioned one element of Haitian culture that comes up a lot in your work is Vodun, a religion that takes in art, performance, rituals. How did you first encounter the practice? How did it find its way into your artistic expression?
I go to a lot of museums, and I find when I do go to museums, I actually look at the, how things are made. I'm very big into just, I spend a lot of hours just closely looking. Most people they go to museums and they look at paintings. It's why is she looking so close? I'm very paying attention to how the surface is built up. So when I do go to certain examples, I go see a lot of West African art at museums. I try to really look at the way that they're making to see how can I at least incorporate that in the way that I would make something. So when I did encounter these Vodun flags, especially the work of Madeleine Constance, I'm not a practitioner of the religion, and I didn't want to go pursue flag making because I didn't feel like it was my I didn't have the right to, at least in my eyes, to do that, because I'm very hypercritical of my own work. I wanted to at least how can I use my own, at least my own techniques and create my own language, especially, and merge it with the idea of painting and textiles to inform my practice and to make something that's inspired by that. Was something I was interested in doing.
And that's definitely something we see in your exhibitions. For example, there was a large exhibition recently at the Speed Art Museum in Kentucky in the US. It was called Invisible Empires. And as well as the pieces that explore sort of the human presence in the Caribbean, I noticed a piece called David, which is more about a meteorological event, another sort of spiral. Can you tell us about this one?
Yes, so it's when, spiralism can take so many different plates. You can even talk about the environment, just the uncertainty with what's going on with not knowing what we're going to expect temperature-wise or storm-wise. So it's it was David, my studio was in such disarray and such chaos. I often my if people when people do come by my studios, there's two different versions, the clean version, and it's just there's so much just trash around. So these scraps that you do see, they're essentially scraps that I had just laying around my studio, and essentially I was able to clean up my studio just by making this hurricane, So David's a hurricane that my mom experienced, and she has such it's always very bittersweet, just fond moments of that hurricane with her just spending it with her friends and family, but also the state of uncertainty of just how strong the storm is going to be. So I wanted to have a way to memorialize that and move away from figuration and go towards abstraction. So when I did make this piece, I ended up with a clean studio, but I was very moved just like with how like I didn't have to make anything. Nothing was actually made. I had the work, in the studio, which was something that's never really like happened before, but it's something that I do want to pursue moving forward.
Sounds like a really sustainable approach to using materials, and of course a really important reflection on how a hurricane marks the landscape and also the society. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kathia.
Thank you for
We'll wrap up the show with some of the vibrant celebrations of the Vodun Days festival in Benin as they celebrate the music, traditions and rituals of this ancestral religion. In its third year now, the event attracts tens of thousands of people to the city of Ouidah. We'll leave you with a glimpse. And a reminder that Kathia's work is on show at both of the Perrotin galleries here in Paris. Do check it out if you get the chance. Otherwise, check in with us next time here on Arts 24. There's more news coming up just after this.
Yeah,